I'm sure he would much prefer to dance with his daughter-to-be." His eyes brightened, and he turned to Emily, whose countenance quickly approximated his. He asked the question, and, after an apologetic glance at Mary, she accepted prettily, and they both moved to join the dancing. "And how is your son?" Mary asked Mrs. Edgerton. "Oh, did Emily not tell you? Adam will soon be returning home. We received a letter just the other day." "How wonderful for you all." "Yes, it will be marvellous to see him, especially as he and Emily have spent so little time in each other's company these past years. We can now start planning for their wedding." "Forgive me, but I did not realize that the situation in the peninsula allowed visits home just yet. Robert has certainly never mentioned any such thing." A crease appeared between Mrs. Edgerton's brows. "I don't believe they were serving in the same regiment." "That must be it," Mary agreed easily. Mrs. Edgerton shifted to answer a neighbour's query on the other side, leaving Mary to watch the dancing once more. The music picked up pace and volume, as if celebrating the inclusion of Emily and Adam's father, as if recognizing them with extra favour due to their connection of loving and being loved by one of the district's favourite sons. Adam Edgerton. Where was he now? Basking in the triumph of the latest victory in Spain, lapping up the adulation of London. Sometimes it was difficult to reconcile her brother's playmate with the formidable soldier he had become. The man whose rise from the ranks to commissioned officer had accompanied several bouts of heroic exploits, including a daring rescue under enemy fire of another of Amberley's own sons. Her brother had never achieved such heights, but Robert's need for spectacles had meant his inclusion in the armed forces had been more a surprise than a certainty, even if he were only allowed to work in the medical corps. Of course, father, a practitioner of medicine himself, had been cautiously gratified to see his son included in such ranks, to know the legacy of his occupation continued. Beyond the dancing figures, Mary's stepmother sat with others of her acquaintance, no doubt good-naturedly gossiping about the prospects of her daughter. Mary's own mother she could scarce remember, her death occurring when Mary had been but 2. Her father's second marriage, a few years later, had resulted in a kindly mother Mary regarded quite as her own and, eventually, a sister 10 years Mary's junior. Joanna resembled neither of her elder siblings, possessing the physical qualities of height, ruddy locks, shining eyes, and clear skin that had eluded her brother and sister. Mother hoped a match might be made this year should Mr. Peters finally come up to scratch. Father, it seemed, was not quite so determined to see his daughter married off to a legal clerk, even if he were the second son of Amberley's third biggest landowner. But his mild protests fell on deaf ears. As if summoned by Mary's thoughts, Joanna appeared in the whirling couples, laughing as the candlelight glinted off her tresses. A clearly smitten Mr. Peters led her to the end of the rows with a gratified expression. Little wonder when the youngest Bloomfield possessed a tendency to flirtatiousness that made some suspect her motives. Perhaps that was what had kept Mr. Peters from proposing. A hesitation until he could be certain that Joanna's heart was truly his. A disturbance at the door drew most eyes to the figure of an agitated-looking Mr. Croker, who stood hat in hand, clearly not dressed for the assembly. The music changed, and her father hurried towards her. "Mary?" "It is time." He nodded, and together they made their farewells and moved to Mr. Croker, whose air of relief threaded concern within. "How is Sally?" she asked him, her short legs struggling to keep up with the farmer's long strides as he exited the building. "She be asking for you, miss." He glanced at her. "And you too, sir," he added, in an almost apologetic tone. Father chuckled softly and shook his head. "I know it is my daughter that Sally wants." He retrieved his medical bag from their hired carriage and issued instructions that the servant wait for his wife and daughter.